Hello, and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar series. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Megan Smith, and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is on September 24th with Joe Everett. He will be giving a presentation about genealogy research in Eastern Europe. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Maureen Brady, who will be talking about comparing the birth, marriage, and death records of the United Kingdom. Before we begin, here's a little bit about our speaker. Maureen Brady, a former school librarian and computer educator, has over 40 years' experience with family history research. She has traced her Scottish roots back to the end of the 17th century and beyond, and has also pursued Chicago and the Midwest, the Trans-Allegheny U.S., Quebec, Irish, and Swedish research. Maureen has made numerous presentations to genealogical societies, libraries, conferences, and workshops throughout the U.S., as well as presenting for the Brigham Young University Library Family History webinar series. She is a member of the Genealogical Speakers Guild and a life member of the Aberdeen and Northeast Scotland Family History Society and the Ohio, Chicago, and McHenry County, Illinois Genealogical Societies. Maureen is also active in the Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, and Lake County, Illinois Genealogical Societies, the British Interest Group of Wisconsin and Illinois, and the Chicago Scots Scottish Genealogical Society. If Maureen is ready, we'll turn the time over to her.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my title slide right now. So we're going to take a look at comparing the birth, marriage, and death records of the United Kingdom. And I've got all 6 symbols of the 6 jurisdictions that constitute the United Kingdom. The 2 in the 2 lower corners are the Isle of Man and the Guernsey Islands off the Channel Coast Islands off the coast of Normandy. I'm not really going to discuss either one of those because those are different kinds of jurisdictions than the others, which are individual countries in a sense. So we're really just going to look at Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales today. So first, though, let's talk about what are the British Isles. That is one kingdom, or was one kingdom before 1922, but it is 6 peoples and 6 cultures. And because of that, today we've got a difference in the way that records are created and availability to us either online or in person. So taking a look at the map, we're going to look at Scotland, Ireland, specifically Northern Ireland, the English, and Wales. And for mostly the records of Ireland, especially civil registration, England and Wales are identical. The church records would look a little bit different. Scotland, though it is part of the United Kingdom, when it became part of the United Kingdom, it was granted its own governmental jurisdiction for things like religion, education, and laws. So the laws in Scotland pertaining to the recording of births, marriages, and deaths has been quite different than English laws. And as you'll see later on, that produces quite a different set of records. So let's first look at church records. So the Church of England would have started with the Reformation in the late 1560s and would go up to about the mid-1830s when civil registration took over the process, though the Church of England records still continue, but the civil registration became more the place you would go after 1837. So I'm going to show you some examples. I did not include these in the handout because these are Crown copyright. And because of that, there is no permission to publish them in any way, but I can use them in a slideshow. So I'm using that way of showing you what these look like, and I apologize for not being able to put them in a handout. So this is a baptism in the Church of Clay Cross, Church of England, for 1892. And you can see it has the date of baptism, the child's name, the parents' Christian names, the surname, and then there's a date, which is the date of birth, even though it doesn't tell you that, where the family lives, his occupation, and then who performed the baptism. It's the typical thing you would see in a church baptism, only in this case, it's in kind of a register format with all of the headings at the top, so it makes it easy to figure out what you're looking at. Marriage, also in that same area. This is also the Clay Cross area, but it's a different parish. And this one is typical marriage, what you would expect. Here's the date of marriage, the bride and groom, their ages, their marital status, his occupation, his residence and hers, and then the father's names and their occupations. English records do not give the name of the mother except on the baptism and birth certificates. The marriage lists only the father and his occupation. The mothers are not listed. And then down below, we also have the particular witnesses to this marriage. A death record or a burial record in one of the Derbyshire parishes has the name of the deceased, the number of burial for the year, where that person lived, when they were buried, their age, and then who performed this church ceremony. So you see, this one is actually a Wesleyan minister who's not Church of England, but because the person is being buried in the Church of England churchyard, it still gets entered into the Church of England register for burials. And this one is another, he's the vicar of a different church, but still Church of England. And this one I would assume is the current church. So this is all you're going to get in burial. It's not going to give you anything about who the parents are, who the spouses are. It's usually not going to tell you what the cause of death is. It's just basically a register of burials. Now, if we take a look at the Church of Scotland, also starting at the period of the Reformation, going up to 1855, which is when Scotland started civil registration. So this is a baptismal register from the parish of Durris from 1844. And the same basic information, but now it's written out as a paragraph. Usually in the margin, you will see the surname of the father. And then we've got George Reed. This is the father, George Reed, and this is where he lives. And his wife, Mary Forbes, so we know this is a legitimate marriage, had a son born on the above date, excuse me, the 5th of June, baptized on the 5th of July, 1844, and the child is named William, and then there are the witnesses and where they lived. So George Forbes and Trees and George Forbes Jr. there. Now, one thing to be kind of keeping in mind is that when you see the word junior or senior, that does not imply a father-son relationship. It simply means that there are two George Forbes, apparently both living in Trees. This is the older of the two, but they may not be father-son. It could be grandfather, grandson, uncle, nephew, or some other even more distant relation than that. Don't make assumptions when you see the words junior and senior. So this is the format that you would follow, and most of the church registers for baptisms follow this basic format throughout all of the parishes of Scotland. Then if we take a look at a marriage, there's a lot less information here. We have this in Grange on the 18th of February, 1815, and John Morrison, who was of the parish of Banff. In other words, he did not live in Grange, he lives in Banff, and Isabel Allen in this parish, so she's from Grange, were regularly proclaimed and married. The date, 18 February 1815, is not the date of marriage. You have to be very careful in the Scottish records particularly, because often it's referring to the date of the first proclamation of banns, and then the marriage date itself is never listed. So we've got another one here. This is the proclamation, regularly proclaimed and married. So all you can say when you see regularly proclaimed within the Scottish Church, that means that beginning on this day, they were proclaimed or the banns were read on 3 consecutive Sundays within the parish church. And then the marriage took place at some point after that third reading of the banns. That's what the word regular refers to. You get some indication of when the marriage is, but not an exact marriage date. Now, taking a look at a burial register, this is 1791 and 1792. And basically, in this time period, it's not really a register of the burials themselves, but that the tax that was paid for the permission to bury someone. This is in a period of time when the British Parliament was taxing a lot of things in the church registers, births, baptisms, marriages, and burials. And so here's a burial register, but it isn't really to note the burial as much as you notice all of these say taxed paid. So here is one of my direct line ancestors on the 14th of January, 1792. James Christie in Walkmill was buried and the tax was paid. And here's a Helen Johnston. And then we have another one down here on the 22nd, John Morrison, a child, son to William Morrison. So there's the child's name and there's the father's name. And you note there's no tax paid on this one. And I think it's because it's a child, because here's another one that's a daughter. And again, there's no tax paid. So this is a burial register from Scotland. Now, there's another thing that you're going to find in the Scottish records called the Scottish Kirk Session. That's K-I-R-K. And it's a separate register. It's really the minutes of the church governing body, but there'll be a lot of information in that Kirk Session record, which has not been indexed. So if you want to go, you should go in there and kind of look for a period, like when you see where those banns were read, go and look in the Kirk Session for a couple of weeks before and a couple of weeks after, and you may actually find the marriage date, or you may find other information about the couple. So for instance, here's one from 1778, and it's July the 15th, meeting at Newton of Park. The session met and constituted and so forth and so on. And then we get down to John Taylor was formerly in Small Bogey and now in Glenforky as having acknowledged himself guilty of adultery with Margaret Beatty, his servant maid, and it was appointed and argued. So this is where you're going to find listings of the illegitimate births. You're also going to find the poor lists when widows are getting money for shoes or for clothing for their children. The Kirk Session will have additional information about both baptisms and marriages, but not burials. Mostly it is the baptisms and marriages, and particularly for the illegitimate births. So this is an example of a Kirk Session record. Also comes under church record, but it's a different register. So in the Scottish Church, you have registers of baptisms, registers of marriages, registers of burials, and then a Kirk Session record. So sometimes the marriages and burials are in the same book if it's a very small parish, but usually you're looking for 3 separate sets of registers and records. Then looking at Church of Ireland, which is the Anglican Church or Episcopalian Church, again, it is going to be very minimal based on the English system. So this is a baptism from February of 1841, and we have the name of the child, the name of the father, the name of the mother, and who the witnesses are, and that's it. Presumably, because this is February, these baptisms were done on the 14th, this is on the 16th, and so on. No birth information at all, just a note of when the baptism took place. A marriage record is very similar. This is February 1846, and we've got the name of the couple, where they live, and I'm not even sure if this is the husband, the wife, or both, and then who the 2 witnesses are, and then that's the date of the marriage. So you can see here, he performed a lot of marriages on the 24th of February. Limited information other than the name of the couple, where they lived, and who the witnesses were. No information about parentage, age, or anything of that sort. And then here's a burial in one of the Church of Ireland. This is in Dublin. And again, we've just got the name of the deceased, where they lived, and the date of burial, and the age. And then over here, we have a note, blank and blank, but you notice this one says RC, meaning it's a Roman Catholic burial, though it's in the local parish churchyard. And sometimes that would have happened because there was space there or because it was a communal churchyard of some sort. So again, burials relatively limiting in the information other than you get a buried date and approximate age. Now looking at the Irish Catholic records, now those were the Protestant records of Ireland. These would be the Catholic records, and we have roughly the same format. Here we have a baptism of a Thomas Brady. It's in Latin. He's writing the name in Latin format, so it says Tommen, M-A-M for masculine, Brady, and son of a Patrick and a Bridget. And then here's the two witnesses, and that is just about it, the date over here, and that's all that's going to be included. Here's a Miriam Brady. This one is a daughter of a Michael and Ann Tully, and there's her witnesses down here. And then this is the townland that they lived in. And you can see it's over kind of in the margins, so you're only getting the beginning part of it. But this would be one baptism here. And this is a different Brady up here because this is Pat and Bridget, where this one is Michael and Anna. Then a burial, or excuse me, marriage. This is a marriage record. Well, here's that Michael Brady marrying Ann Tully in 1841 on February 6th, with the witnesses are Bernard Brady and Ann Daly. And it doesn't tell us anything about relationships between Michael and Bernard. It could just be same name for surname, or it could be some relationship, but we cannot understand what it could be, and don't make any assumptions just because the names are the same, especially when you're in a parish, as this one is, where they're about half the parish have Brady's in some way, either as mothers or fathers. So you should never make the assumption, but it's certainly something to note. But this is all you get for marriage in the Catholic records in Ireland for the most part. And they do not keep burial records. So those are the church records. We've covered England, Scotland, the Irish Protestant Church, and the Irish Catholic Church. Now let's move on to civil registration records. This is where the differences really become noticeable. So if you are on, for instance, Ancestry, and you are looking for a marriage or baptismal record or a death record in England post 1837, all you're going to get is an index listing, and it's a printed index. It looks like this. It's alphabetical by last name and then first name, and it gives the name of the parish. I'm not sure what this is, because it says names. This is actually marriage. Sorry, this is a marriage register. Was a little confused there for a minute. So we have down here, for instance, Alan Willis marrying somebody named Metcalf, and the registration district is Wensleydale, and it's registered in the first book, page 1901. This column here are not necessarily town names. They are district names, and some of them will be within larger cities such as Paddington and Stepney and Fulham are all part of London today. But in those days, they were then still are separate registration districts. So unfortunately, the index tells you at least the groom and the bride's surname, but then where's my town? And you've got to do a lot of research to find out what part of Nottingham this Nottingham registration district was part of, and is that likely to be where your Evelyn Willies marrying a Laws would have lived. It's both male and female all combined together, but it's these registration districts rather than place names that make it difficult to narrow in on what record you might want for England for both births, marriages, and deaths. And this is all you're going to see online is this printed index. And then you would have to order the actual certificate. There is an online ordering system from the Public Record Office of England in order to get the actual certificate. So let's look, and then here's to show you the comparison. This is Scotland. Remember, I said Scotland has its own laws pertaining to education in the church and so on. So this is the online website, Scotland's People. And this is, again, an index to marriages of people named McCrae with the name of their spouse. And in this case, it includes the first name. It tells me the year. It gives me the reference number, that is a registration district number and page. But it also gives me the name of the district. But in this case, it is much easier to tell where that registration district is. For instance, Belhelvie matches the parish of Belhelvie. Tarvis matches the parish of Tarvis, and so on. And then here's the best part. Right online, you can view, this is a subscription site, but for 6 credits, you can actually view the certificate. Or if you want a certified copy, you can order the certificate directly from this. But the view is a digitized copy, and it's right there for you to download and so on. You cannot do that on the English index sites. You can only order them directly from the Public Record Office. So that's one major difference between the English and the Scottish records. Now let's take a look at what they actually look like. This is England and Ireland. This is a birth record, so it tells me it's in the district of Skibbereen, and the district is at Union Hall. That's the place where you would go. And then it repeats it, births registered in the district of Union Hall in the Union of Skibbereen, County of Cork. And then here's the number of births for the year. So this is number 82 on this date. Child's first name, sex, father, mother, and there's the mother's maiden surname, Driscoll. He's living in Kildare. He's a farmer. And then here's the informant. And the informant is not Timothy Sullivan, but Johanna Sullivan, and she's signing with her mark. And here's the date of the registration and the registrar's name over here. So we do get the mother's full name, as we did in the church records, but with the addition of, we have a maiden name, which doesn't always show up in the church records. And we've got the particulars as to the date and so on. So that's England and Ireland. Well, here's a birth record from Scotland as a comparison. So here's our place, District of New Sligo, County of Aberdeen, and then New Sligo matches an old parish name. The numbers are 16, 17, and 18. We even have a note over here on the far left that these are twins on the first two. But here's the name of the child. Here's the birth information, where it was located, sex, female and male, father, who's a general merchant, mother, maiden surname Ireside. But here's the bonus in the Scottish Church, in the Scottish civil registration birth records, the date and place of the parents' marriage. They still do this in Scotland. So we know that these twins that were born in March of 1901, the parents were married in January of 1891, 10 years previous. And we also have the father's signature in this case here. And the present means that he lives at the same address as to where the birth took place. So we have this bonus marriage information on the Scottish birth records after 1855. England does not do this. Ireland does not do this, only in Scotland. So this is how and there's 3 per page. And when you pull it up on Family Search or on Scotland's People, you will get to see all 3 on the same page. Now let's take a look at marriages. So this is a civil registration marriage right from England and Ireland. We've got those places up here. This is the district of Culheen in the county of Tipperary. Number 15, marriage number 15, the date, names of the couple, full age, meaning they're at least 21. It's not giving you anything more than that. She's a farmer as well as he is a farmer. So in this case, the woman also has an occupation, their places they lived, who their fathers were, and the father's occupation. And again, we have a ditto, and here are the witnesses down here. So fairly close to what we were expecting. It doesn't give us much in the way of actual age. It doesn't tell us the mother, as it doesn't previous in the church records, but at least we do have her full name, his full name, and what their parents did, or their fathers at least did for a living. So that's England and Ireland. Now, if we take a look at Scotland, we now have the name of the pair of the district up here. So this is St. Nicholas in Aberdeen, date and place of marriage, and then it tells you the form of the marriage. So this is after publication according to the forms of the Wesleyan Church. That would be the Methodist Church. Down here, it's the Free Church, which is the Free Church of Scotland. This is from 1912. Again, groom and bride, their occupations, whether they're bachelor or spinster, their age, where they're living at the time of the marriage, their parents, including maiden surname for the mother, who is the minister or whoever conducted the ceremony, his signature up here, and the signatures of the witnesses, which sometimes also includes the witnesses' addresses, and then the date of registration and the registrar. So comparing this to the English record, we get exact, well, at least what they're saying their ages are. We're getting the type of ceremony that was performed. It isn't just assuming it's Church of England. This one is Wesleyan and this one says United Free Church. And so you'll see those kinds of differentiations on the Scottish records. And also sometimes you'll get an indication by who signs it. So this is a Wesleyan minister, and then down here we have a United Church, and there's his parish name there. So a little bit more information on the Scottish ones, and certainly it is going to give you some more information in terms of possible other places to go look for their children, for instance. Then taking a look at the deaths, again, England and Ireland. Here's another one from Tipperary. And we've got, this is the 49th death in the year in April of 1879. Name of the deceased, he's a male, he's married, we at least find that out. Age 60, he's a small farmer, died of bronchitis. Now we're getting the actual cause of death, and he suffered from it for 12 months. And then the person who informed it is this Joanna Lonigan, who's present at the death, but she lives in this town. You see where it's a different place than, well, it actually is the same, but it's telling you where she lives, and then the registration date and registrar's name. We now can get a cause of death. Now, this is after 1837, remember, for England and Ireland. Well, Ireland starts in the 1860s. England is 1837. But we get a little more picture of who this person is, but we still do not get spouse, and we still do not get parents. Now, if we take a look at Scotland, this is again your district at the top, and here's the number of the death in the year. Here's the name of the deceased. This is this George Collings, where he's a excuse me, a gravel laborer in the retired, and he's the widow of Alicia Whitehall Forsyth. And this one down here is married to John. You can see that where there's a widow, there's a marriage. The spouse's name is most of the time included. There was a 4-year period in the late 1850s when they did not put that in. It just said married or single. But after 1861, this is always included in the death registers. Place and time of death, sex, age, the father's name and occupation, and note the word deceased on this one. In fact, they all are. That usually is correct, not 100% of the time, but usually if the parent is deceased, it will say that, and it is normally correct. So father and mother, and then so on. Here's the cause of death, certified by whom, and sometimes it gives you more than this detail. And then who is the informant? Well, in this case, it's an A.F. Collings, who's the son, and he's living in Kirkcaldy, where this is actually a death taking place in Aberdeen. So we have a witness, but he's living in a different place, so we get his full address. We're down here on the last one, it just has present, meaning that this widower is also living at the place of death. So much more information on the Scottish death certificate, especially the name of the spouse, the full names of the parents, whether they're living or not. And then we also get the full information on who the witness is. So much more complete. There's an additional item in the Scottish civil registrations that you need to keep your eye out for. And it's called the Register of Corrected Entries. Unfortunately, you can't see the stamp over here too well. The ink didn't come through, but always look in this column all the way on the left and watch for a stamp in this column, which would have the letters RCE, like Richard, Charles, Edward, for Register of Corrected Entries. And on Scotland's People, you get, this is a 6 credit to see this page, but to see this, there is no additional charge. So if you have an RCE entry, you'll also be able to see it for no additional. But let's first take a look at the death certificate. So it's the same as what we had before. Excuse me, this is a marriage certificate. This is in Livingston in West Lothian, which is down near Edinburgh. Here's your marriage information and so forth and so forth and so forth. But it has an RCE over here. So you would then click on that, and it turns out to be a case of bigamy. And you get the full information. Here's the full page, and it talks about what the instances were of bigamy and how that knowledge became known and by whom. And here's a brief summary of the testimony that was made in court to prove that bigamy. And that's why the register was corrected to indicate that that was a bigamist situation. Now, taking a look at another RCE, see here we have his first wife, Alexandra Ina Waddell or Robertson, being still alive, and so on. Here's another one. This is a different marriage. And again, we have this RCE. You can read it much easier. And you see they've written in the word divorce. So you click there, and you get the whole particular in summary of the divorce that was a result of that bigamy charge from the earlier marriage. So not only was there 2 marriages, one was bigamy and the other one was divorce. And both of them had notices that there was a corrected entry in the separate register. You want to look out for those. In the birth records, it could easily be the proof of paternity of who the father was, with some information regarding the testimony that would have proven that. So watch for the RCEs in that farthest left column in the birth, marriage, and death registers in Scotland. So now let's take a look at the websites. So I start with Family Search because it's free, but it also has a vast collection of the Scottish records we're going to want to look at. Excuse me a moment. So on Family Search, there's 2 places I'm going to direct you to tonight. One is the Research Wiki. So if you go on, this is the landing page, the home page for Family Search. And after you've signed in, come up here to the search function. You'll get a drop-down list, and we want to come down here to Research Wiki. And when that opens up, go look for Ireland genealogy, England genealogy, Scotland genealogy, whichever country you're interested in. And you'll get a page that will come up looking like this. And what you need to do is pay attention to the blue button, whoops, down in the bottom left-hand corner. When you click there, it takes you to a list, a compiled list of the online indexes, databases on most of the major websites that would contain some sort of genealogical information. So in this case, it's Ireland. So we have databases of Family Search, Find My Past, Ancestry, and Irish genealogy that have something to do with births. Under marriages, we have the same 2 Find My Past lists under deaths and so on. And this goes on for quite a long list. It's all divided by type of record. There's military databases in there. There's historical ones. There's tax lists. There's school records. There's all sorts of things that would come up under that Ireland online genealogy records, which are these databases. You note that some of these have $signs because those are subscription sites, but many libraries, at least in the United States, might have accessibility to them for their patrons. And certainly any of these databases are available for free at every family search center. We all have access to those websites. Also, in the wiki, you want to search for your country and then church records, or your country and civil registration. Doing either one of those is separate. So here's an example for Scotland church records. Here's a UK Admiralty. These would be the Navy ships, marriages and baptisms that took place on board ships. But down here under the OPR, which is the church records, Church of Scotland, you notice down here we have a number of databases that you can use here on Family Search to look for and identify what records you're looking for in the church. It's Family Searches and Index and Images, and it says is $, but Family Search is free. So why is there a $? And that is because you need to either be at a Family Search Center to see them, or you have to go to the Scotland's People website to access them and use their subscription site to be able to look at the images. And that's why it has a $, by Family Search. Family Search does have the images, but you must be at a Family Search Center to see them. Now, these two down here do not have, this one doesn't have a $. This one does, same problem, same thing there. The blotter records and so on do not. So it would be under the name of the country and church records, or the name of the country and civil registration. You would want to take a look at those two articles within the wiki to get a full background of what's available and how you would use those records. When you find something in the Scottish baptisms list on Family Search, for instance, this is what the index looks like on Family Search. And we have the name of the baby, the child, when they were christened, where, who the parents are. And then we have a little piece, a link here to the actual index information. When you click there, you notice there's no camera, because you have to be at the center to see that film, that image, or go to Scotland's People with the information you find here. If you come over here, you'll get this same information, but in addition to some other, but it still will not give you the image unless you are at the Family Search Centers. At home, you get the index. At the center, you get the image. So let's take a look at another way you can access the records on Family Search other than through the indexes, and that is through the catalog. So you come down to catalog and you can search for Scotland, or the name of a parish or a city or a county, and then it will show you what's available at that level in the church and civil registration is all I'm showing you here. It's obviously a much longer list, but we have 59 church records under Scotland. We have 6 civil registration under Scotland. But if you take a look under the District of Old Makar, there is no, the civil registration does not include what these civil registrations are. And there's only 59 church records here, where there's 73 here. The civil registration in both countries is always at the country level. So even though you may know that your grandfather was baptized in Thurso in Scotland, you would not look it up under Thurso. You would still look it up under Scotland and then follow the directions of how you would find that particular roll of film. You can do it if you're at the Family Search Centers. It's easier to do it on Scotland's People, though you pay for it. So this is the difference between the two. This is a parish or a registration district. This is the country. Much longer list here. Now, to show you what this looks like, if I go to church records under Aberdeen, now we're getting a list of 73 different sets of records. And over here, you can see the different parishes that it's part of. And it goes on, this is only the beginning part. These are available if you are at the center to see these images, but you must be at the center. In addition to the blotter registers, you'll also get the registers of births, marriages, and deaths, and so on. So the difference between the two is that in the Scottish records, it's only things that are at the Scotland level, but that does include the civil registration. And at the local level is where you're going to find the church records and the tax lists and those sorts of things. Now let's move on to ancestry. Ancestry is a little trickier to find. So you start at the same point, the search function. And when you click there, you're going to want to choose all collections, not any of these down here. Choose the very first one, all collections. It will change to this screen, which is encouraging you to start putting in names and all of that, but ignore all of that and scroll down. When you get to the bottom, you'll see a map. It defaults to the United States, but click on Europe, and then you can pick Ireland or England or Scotland or Wales as your own list. But you have to scroll to the bottom. I'm going to go back to that. You have to scroll to the bottom of this search window to get to this map. And then you have to click on Europe in order to pick your particular country. Once you do that, then you get into the list of the databases on Ancestry for that particular country. So here's England and Wales combined. You can see the numbers over here. So here's births and christenings, over 191 million. Under civil registration births, starting from 1916, we have over 71 million. Before 1915, another 66 million, and so forth. They are listed somewhat, well, I'm not quite sure what order they use. It's not exactly alphabetical because we have deaths before christenings and then back to deaths, but it sometimes comes up in different order also. But you'll get your entire list this way by choosing that map and then Europe and then England, and then you get the list of all of the databases on Ancestry for English records. The same thing is true for Ireland or Scotland. Now for Find My Past, it is owned by Ancestry, and there is some cross-listing of their different databases. So some of those databases on Ancestry, when you actually click on an image, it's going to take you to Find My Past, and it's going to ask you for your login information for Find My Past. As long as you're at the Family Search Center, however, or a library that has both available for their patrons, you do not need to worry about having your own account. Find My Past has records from all 6 of those government entities that make up the United Kingdom. And here's an example for the births, marriages, and deaths. It's alphabetical by county. So we have Cheshire, then Devon, and then we have Roman Catholic down here because it's under England and so on. Tells you these are all births, marriages, and deaths. Here's one on the workhouses and poor law and the number of records that are in each database. You would click here, it's an index, but then it does take you to the images. And in particular, when I find something on that printed list of indexes for the births, marriages, and deaths of England, I'll find that information and then come over here and then try to find it in this list by the county, and then maybe I'll get to the actual church record, not the government registration, but the church record of that particular marriage, birth, or death. Going on to Roots Ireland, this is another website. It's an index only, and you pay to use the index. You pay to get the index information. So looking for an Ellen Jones, born somewhere in the mid-1840s. Her father is Richard Jones and her mother is a Margaret. And here we have Ellen, baptized on the 11th of June, 1845, in Newmarket, which is a Roman Catholic parish. And here are her parents, and here are the witnesses, and then here's the name of the priest down here. This is just an index. So today, however, Roots Ireland has combined their index with the images at the National Library of Ireland. And so there's a link at the bottom to take you directly to that image that this is referencing. And here it is, the Newmarket Roman Catholic Parish, County Cork, baptisms of June 1845. And there is Ellen of Richard Jones and Margaret Ditto, meaning Jones, and the witnesses are Robin Jones or John Jones, I'm not sure which, and Ellen Leahy. That's all you're going to get, but it takes you directly to that page of the register. Now, once you know the parish, then you can go to the National Library of Ireland page on all of these URLs in your handout. And then knowing the name of the parish, you enter the name of the parish into their database. These are free. And you can come over here and look through the entire roll of baptisms page by page for free. It also shows you where Newmarket is in relationship to surrounding parishes. And then down lower is the list of marriages. And this is available online at home. And you can go through this page by page without having to use the index and get to a certain singular entry. The index costs money. These records on the National Library do not, because it's from the government library. So good luck in your hunt and good luck with finding your records in the British Isles. And I'm going to stop share and we'll go back for questions now.
All right. It seems most of the questions are about the handout. I sent the link at the beginning and I'll resend it again right now.
Yeah, that's what all of them seem to be. If you use the research wiki on family search and you look up the country and church records or the country and the civil registration, and then just follow how it suggests you research them, it really is a step-by-step guide in how you get into the records and where they're available. And so that's why I have that as my starting point.
Perfect. Well, it seems we don't have any specific questions. So thank you so much, Maureen, for your presentation.
Thank you, Kathy Wells, for your comment.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope that you will join us for our next webinar on September 24th with Joe Everett. A recording of this webinar will be made available by next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow our Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.